Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of our virtual Home and Community Care Conference. Hope you all had a good evening and maybe did some self-care, such as a walk, or spent some time with family and friends. Just as a reminder, could everyone please mute their phones? Thank you. For those that did not attend yesterday, my name is Pam Bowser. I'm a Home and Community Care Coordinator at FNIB, Indigenous Services Canada. On the agenda for today, we'll just do a quick review. From 9 to 10, we have mindfulness meditation, Take a Moment with Anne Labillois. From 10 o'clock to 10:15, we have a stretch break. From 10:15 to 11:15, Maintaining Mental Health and Wellness in the Home with St. Elizabeth First Nations, Inuit, and Metis Health. And from 11:15 to 11:30, Closing and Evaluations. We'll send out a electronic evaluation for you to complete, and we'll let you know more about that as the morning goes on. We're going to start our morning off feeling relaxed with Anne. She's going to do some more meditation with us. Anne is from Eel River Bar in New Brunswick and worked in the community as an addiction counselor for 12 years and is a qualified instructor of mindfulness-based stress reduction. Anne is currently studying philosophy at Dalhousie University. And she has 3 wonderful children and 3 beautiful grandchildren. Okay, enjoy the morning, everyone, and welcome Anne.
Willie Exiklu, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, Willie Exiklu to everyone. Wow. I have to say, every morning when I wake up, I have to say thank you for my breath, that I'm still here. This is just how I feel every morning, because my breath can stop anytime during the night. I would know it's not mine to control. So I have learned to appreciate it. Every breath that I take, that's how important, a special gift it is. So just to start off, I'm going to, I like to start every little session that I do somehow, and this will be a little smudge. I don't know if you can see that. It's not about what we can see, it's about what we know and what we believe. So bless all the rooms, even though we're virtual, it still reaches you. Bless your mind, your thoughts, your physical being, everything that was given to you when you took that first breath. That you may find your way to the truth, and you be grounded forever, and be well and know peace. And Sonogama. I'd like to just talk a little bit about our some of our prayers. I thought there was such a beautiful prayer yesterday, because I myself do not speak the language also. My community never, Ubigunchik, we learn from our children the language, and if we do any songs, that's how we learn the language also. I was trying to take a language program this year, but it got canceled due to everything that was going on. So I'm always in the process of trying to grasp what it is that our language does. And I know my mom was a fluent in her language. People would come and they say, "Oh, she speaks the old Micmac, the old Micmac." Even her sister Margaret used to come to her to know words and learn from her. And when she spoke, and when I would ask her what she was talking about, and she would try to describe it, it was so exactly what she was looking at, or exactly what that feeling felt like. It's a description beyond description. You know, when I started to listen to other elders talk, or being in the woods and they would talk about a tree, it wasn't just the tree that was standing there. They knew that the color of the texture, they would describe exactly what it was, the truth. It was always the truth. For me, the language is the foundation of the truth, you know, and us as humans, as who we are, we kind of develop things along the way, you know, comes the slang and all that, and things that develop as generations go on. But we always have to remember the truth of where it came from. That's so important. The truth of where it came from. What is the truth? And I always think about our prayer, "O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind." We say it, you know, whose breath gives life to all. Help me, because I'm young, weak, and small. I mean, I need help all the time. And the most profound part was when it says, "Help me to see the lessons that you've put in every leaf and rock." Like, what is that? The lessons. I used to think, oh, what kind of lesson is there in a rock? You know, like, it's a rock. But as time went on and I started to really look, my mom would always say, "Look and you'll see." But at that time, I didn't have the patience to sit and look. I thought it was absolutely crazy, funny, you know. I would laugh it off and go rushing off to something that never happened. And as I realized, when I really did start to look and watch and listen, those darn rocks move. They move in the earth. The earth is a huge rock that's alive. And these rocks actually move into the earth, and they move and they'll come up somewhere else. And they have minerals on them, and they have all kind of things on them that the water needs to flow over and get its minerals and then brings it elsewhere. Like, it's just phenomenal. Our creation is phenomenal. And the trees, I just love trees so much, because they saved my life when I was an active addict. They saved my life. When I would get so lost in searching to try to relieve the pain or whatever it was I was doing, I would always crawl into the forest and sit by a tree until I felt like I was not high anymore. And why did I do that? I did that for years. I would go out and party and oh yeah, I wanted to be with the crowd because I didn't want to feel that loneliness that haunted me. But then I would always leave because I would get so high, I wasn't happy anymore. And I would have to go and sit by a tree for hours until I sobered up. But I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize what the forests, the trees were doing to me. They were actually helping me to heal, because they give off energy. Their spirit. You know, our prayers say it all. And I really have to start learning to listen to our prayers. Like, yeah, it's not just saying it. It's somehow, how do I live that? How do I do that? I always wanted to know, how do you do that? And so when I came across mindfulness, the practice of sitting with the earth, mindfulness is just a label. It's just a description. The practice itself, I truly believe, like I said yesterday, that our ancestors did that before they went out hunting, when they got up in the morning, when they gave thanks for their food, for their clothing, for everything. They always sat. Those pictures, you ever see those pictures of the Indians sitting on the mountainside? Well, that's what he's doing. He's listening. He's there. He's in that moment. There's no disturbance. He's searching for the truth. So this is what I like to share. I don't do anything. I just provide the time for you and for all those that come. Like, this is something that you come here 9 o'clock in the morning to hear me talk about sitting in silence. Like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of other things we could be doing. But this is just as important as everything else. And you should give yourself a pat on the back. You should give yourself a hug for honoring who you are and for what you were created to be. And that's pretty profound, of what you're created to be. So I just provide the time for you, or the space, and you meet yourself. So I'm not going to talk too much longer. I'd like to actually practice with you, to share with you those little practices. They're very little, but after a while, they become just like your breathing. You're able to do this anywhere, anytime. And when you want to do a real formal practice, which is really wonderful, I love going to retreats for sometimes a break to really ground myself. And I'll go to a retreat, a silent retreat for 7 to 10 days, and just sit in total silence with myself. And I feel well afterwards. My mind begins to clear up. And that's what it is to be mindful. It's to be able to handle the everyday that goes on with a clear mind, because we react to everything. And when we react to everything, goes on with a clear, it'll always either be like a stressful reaction. Energy flows like water. It's smooth. That's how it flows. When we react to something, our energy is like this. It's like almost like a crinkling, like aluminum foil. That's what it looks like. And it travels from our brain. The minute we think our thought, it travels all the way down to every cell, right down to our toenails, instantly. Without knowing it, this is how we create our illnesses. This is how we create depression. Depression is about being sad, worrisome. The energy of worrisome creates arthritis in our system, and it creates other things too. Our liver, our pancreas, our kidneys, they're all connected to here. So whatever happens here happens everywhere. And when we're in the moment, and we know peace for a moment, we become well. When we are well, you know you're at peace. And it may only be for a moment, but those moments make a big difference. When I worked with, in the addictions, I found that it was very hard, and it was very hard for me too, to learn how to sit with myself, because like I mentioned yesterday, I didn't like to think of anything. I was always trying to do something so I didn't have to think. So if anybody tells you, well, just sit and clear your mind or just forget about it, there's no such thing. No such thing. Our brain is made that way to think. But we have a relationship with our brain also. And that's the thing that comes together, our relationship with our thoughts. I can change the relationship I have with all my thoughts, one thought at a time. When I just started to discover this, I didn't know why when I started to work in addictions, I was still struggling. And you know, you could be talking with somebody, a group of people, and somebody comes up and they kind of like stand in front of you and they're talking to the person that you're talking to, and they get talking, and I would always feel like as if, oh well, they don't want to hear me anyway. So I would turn around and walk away. I would always disappear. And that was that instant remembering inside my core of my body of rejection. Those people weren't rejecting me, but that was that instant memory being triggered from when I was 11 months old, from when my parents left me there. That was my association with that trauma in the moment. And that once I started to realize what I was doing, I would have to go and say, now, why did I do that? Why would I feel that? I was questioning myself all the time. Why? Where is this coming from? And that's how I slowly, with guidance and practice every single day, to realize all those emotions and everything and triggers of memories came from that little girl a long time ago who didn't know how to release it. And that's the working, as we call it, to work on ourselves. In addiction, in sobriety, we work on ourselves constantly. We find things that work for us. For me, it was this meditation, the sitting practice, sitting with the one who gave me my breath. That's all it came down to. And I wanted peace so bad. That's where I practiced all the time. But I wasn't trying to get anywhere. It's very important when you meditate. A lot of people believe that when they meditate, yes, we have guided times that we can go to a rock or we can go in a forest. That is good too. There's a time for that. But it's almost like as if we can get lost into it because we make it the way we want it, the way we want it.
Back on. I was telling them being sorry, I'm trying.
We've set up restrictions, we've set up walls, and we're further from the truth than we realize. So enough of me jabbering on. I'm going to have you experience two different feelings, two different sensations. And what I'm asking you is to, when you think of something, when you notice you're actually thinking of something, to feel what is happening in your physical being. Because your physical being's always talking to you through pain, through indigestion or whatever. So I just want you to experience these two things that you go through. And I would like to hear if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions right now? Wondering about anything? Wondering what the heck this is? Okay. I'm very honored. So I'm going to ask you again we're going to check in. I call it checking in. So when we check in, I just close my eyes and I feel my breath. It's always feeling my breath because that's what keeps me alive. And feel your natural rhythm. So just take a moment and just let's check in and do that. Feel the breath come in and feel it go out. Come in, and this breath out. Just find your natural rhythm. Don't force yourself to breathe. Just kind of sit with that natural breathing. Don't worry about your shoulders or anything right now. You might be a little more aware today that your whole body moves when you breathe. Every cell in your body breathes. And the next breath we take in, we're going to visualize for a moment that breath coming in like sacred smoke. And the minute you bring it in, it's going to go all the way down to your toes. Breathe it in again. And it's going to go all the way down to Mother Earth. Breathe in again. And now you're aware of the cycle that it passes through the earth and into the universe. Breathe in again. As it comes by the stars and the moon and the sun and the air and the trees. And breathe naturally that cycle. That circle that you're connected with. All. And know you are grounded in this moment. As our prayer continues on, help me to conquer the greatest enemy, myself. What is that? We live in a world with many distractions and illusions. But the truth is right here, right now with you. Everything you need is right here, right now with you. So now we're going to do another little guidance, and we're going to find ourselves in a forest. Your forest. Your forest can be whatever you like it to be. Your favorite flowers, trees, birds, animals. Now you're going to be walking through your forest, very gently touching Mother Earth, noticing everything. And now you hear some water. As you're walking towards that noise, that sound, you see a river, a stream. It's your river of thoughts. So it could be a small little trickle. It could be as wide as it can be. But there is a rock, a little ways from the shore, and not just a ways that you can step on it. So go there and step on that rock. If you're afraid of water, you can sit on the shore. But sit on your rock or the shore wherever you're comfortable. And feel the energy of your stream of thoughts as it flows all around you. This is your stream of thoughts. And there's all kind of bubbles. These bubbles are thoughts, your thoughts from your stream. This is how your mind is all the time. but we're going to purposely look at one of those bubbles, and it's going to be a bubble that's going to be something that makes you feel a little uneasy. Not extreme, but something that makes you feel a little uneasy. It's going to trigger something off. And I would like you to really notice what it is. And to just sit with it. Don't try to make it anything, but just be aware of it. What is it? Now be aware of how your body is feeling. Where is that thought reacting to? Is it in your back? You suddenly feel your head tingling. Maybe your blood pressure is going up. Just for a moment. Just be aware of what's happening. Now take that bubble and just kind of touch it. Reach up and touch it. And it'll burst like a mist. Allow it to just burst and go, and just tell yourself, okay, come back to this moment. I'm bringing myself back to this moment, sitting on this rock. My breath in, my breath out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out, and just sit and be. Be with the one who gives you your breath. And if that thought pops up again, you've already become aware that it's coming back. So as practice, you keep bursting that bubble and allowing it to disappear as a mist and bring yourself back to the moment. There is not anybody who cannot do that. If you think that you have to keep bringing yourself back 3, 4, 5 times, that's what you have to do. It's like riding a bike, learning how to pedal it, to feel the balance. Now on the next breath in, become aware that you're going to look at another one of those bubbles. But it's going to be a bubble that's going to make you feel very well, happy, joyous. It even puts a smile on your face. Be aware of how your physical body is feeling when you're in that moment. And that is a feeling of joy. How is your physical body feeling? Where is it? How different is it from the first feeling? Know what real joy is. Now this is your stream, and you can go back to your stream anytime you want to. Anytime, anywhere. This is yours. This is who you are. So feeling very well now, you can get up off your rock and walk back into your forest. A beautiful forest you have. You are. And feel that breath come in and feel it go out. As you stand next to a tree, find yourself your tree and stand there and feel the breathing breath of the tree as it breathes along with you. Now you can come back into your room, into clock time, into the world that we exist in. And move your hands. It's always good to move your fingers and your toes, and like I had mentioned yesterday, to rotate your ankles, because it allows the energy to flow through our physical body. And sort of you're still aware of those feelings. I'm going to ask somebody or anyone if they could share that experience. Now, not everybody is able to feel everything right away. So don't feel that, you're doing something wrong or you're not able to do this. We've never taken the time to do such things. We've never taken the time, as often as we could, to be able to practice this, to really get to know how it is to be with ourselves and to be ourselves. So would anybody would like to share what the first bubble that we looked at, the one that made you feel a little uncomfortable? Was anybody aware where it took place in their physical being? Would anybody like to share? There's no right or wrong. This is who you are. So it's... Okay. Those are very...
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. This is Christiane in Natwashish, Labrador. Good morning, and
Good morning,
everybody. For me, these conferences are extremely important, as I have said on those occasions where I didn't have any visuals and all I could do was talk on the phone with people listening and me listening to them. The sense of isolation and being on my own and feeling overwhelmed a few times, that was my first bubble. So, yeah, that's there. But
how did that make you feel? Like, how was that feeling?
Aiden, heavy. It gave me a heavy heart. And one can breathe, right? It is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's as powerful as it gets, that heavy heart, that heaviness. We don't realize we're creating that by reacting to things. And this isolation and virus, I look at it as sort of like an awakening for the world to know how to get back to the truth. to take that time. We've been forced, actually been forced. Imagine that. The world has been forced to stop and to be with oneself. My gosh, we've never had that kind of opportunity. As sad as the kind of opportunity it still is an opportunity to be able to learn how to be with ourselves, learn what makes us happy. And I always pray for those that are out there that have no one or have no way to hear these things. And when they're with themselves, it becomes very, very destructive, very self-destructive, because they're so full of sadness. They're so full of loneliness. And they don't know how to get out or how to find themselves. So when we breathe in and when we breathe out, we're letting all what's not ours to be released. Every breath is a new moment. It's a new beginning. And when we begin to realize that we are grounded with everything, for me anyways, that loneliness has completely disappeared. I have to say that. It has completely disappeared. I don't feel alone anymore. Even when I'm alone, I don't feel alone anymore. Because I know that I have my breath, and I know that I'm that special, that I'm still here, and that I'm connected to everything. And our people that are out there that get lost into the drinking and drugs, that's exactly what we did. That's exactly what I did. Because I was trying to find a way to find peace with whatever was going on up here. But because I grabbed all that, it was only a Band-Aid. It would numb me out, but I would always have to wake up. I would always have to sober up, and it was the worst ever. So our people that suffer with that, they are able, because we were created that way. We are able to find our seat in this creation with ourselves, to be well. But it is a practice, a diligent practice every day, just like getting up, making our coffee. I try to make getting up almost, my kids, they, I don't know why, but this is my brain. And this is how I find joy in everything. I love to get up and make that little ceremony in my bed before I jump up. I'm not always great at, people think that doing mindfulness and sitting is sitting on a cushion. I have a cushion, but I don't always sit on that cushion. That's the hardest thing, is to get there and to actually do it. So I try doing it before I jump out of bed. I allow myself to relax and I feel my breath. And if I find myself thinking, I have to go through that whole ritual of letting my thoughts go and just bringing myself to this moment with my breath. Come back with my breath. Our breath is our anchor in life. We're like a ship. We're like a ship on the ocean. We're constantly going, bobbing up and down, in and out, and our breath is our anchor that keeps us grounded, keeps us connected. So when I make my coffee and everything, I have to say thank you. I'm always saying thank you to everything, to the sun, the earth, for my coffee, because that's where it came from. When I look at my coffee, I see sunshine. When I look at my eggs, I see sunshine and the grass. And so it's just become so natural for me to do that, but it's taken a long time. With a great deal. I wanted to know peace so bad. I wanted it so bad. I wanted to know who I was. Why did you create me who I am. I'm a Mi'kmaq woman. What does that mean? You gave me breath into this physical being, into my nation where I am. What am I to do? Like, how do I connect? And that's the only way that I know. But I have to sit with it. I have to sit with it, and I believe that our ancestors sat with it. That's why they knew how the animals were. They had such a relationship with everything because they felt it, they seen it, they heard it. And in this world, it can be a real chore because we're so darn busy. But it is possible. You have your breath. You're that sacred that you have a breath. Always remember that. You're not ever alone. Before you go into your meetings, before I go into any meeting, I try very hard. I find myself going into my bathroom. That's what I do. I go and I just stand there and I just feel my breath. And I allow my shoulders to relax. I allow everything to relax and be connected to Mother Earth and the roots of Mother Earth. For a minute or two, allow my brain to rejuvenate itself. And then I go. Then I'm able to go. But I try to do that all through the day. For everything that I do. Before I leave the house, it takes a minute. If I don't do it in the house, I remember when I get in my car before I turn it on. And then I'm good. I can feel that. And those moments, like I said before, those moments add up. And when you're in that moment, the healing begins. The healing happens because we heal. Our physical body, it cuts, it heals by itself. We just put a Band-Aid on it. And it does all the rest. But it's the internal organs that we don't see that have a harder time to heal because they're always reacting to our thoughts and everything. We can't put a Band-Aid on them. So I don't know if no, I do know. I do know that you are here. And that is so special. How many hands can you raise to show me that this is the first time you've tried this or sat with yourself? Can you raise hands? Oh, I think my screen is frozen. Yeah, my screen is frozen. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I don't see anything moving, so I know I'm not able to see.
We can hear you, Anne.
Okay. All right.
And see you.
Yes.
Everything else is standing still, so, but that's okay. That's okay. Would anyone like to say, yes, this is the first time I've sat with myself, and is it hard? Is it uncomfortable? No? Okay. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just being able to say what we feel, what we're feeling, and it's okay. It's okay to feel whatever it is we are feeling. That's how we get to know who we are. Our feelings were never meant to hurt us, no matter how sad or how traumatic they were. They were never meant to hurt us. And they don't make who we are today. I've come to find that out. A lot of my reactions to things, it's not who I was. It's not who I am. It's what I thought at that time and my reaction then. So I've learned to go back and change that relationship with that happened. And now I embrace my past. I embrace my past, as painful as it is. And my pain has become my strength. In time, that's what it has become. And I don't ever want to lose that connection with it. So, again, I say thank you. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank yourself for being here this morning. Everybody's moving again. I'm very honored. So I'm going to just ask you to check in one more time before we leave. Just check in again. And just feel your breath. This is how quick and easy it is. And it's still like work. Feel that breath come in. And feel the breath go out. Feel the breath come in. And feel it go out. And your shoulders relax. With every out-breath, let every muscle relax. Breathe in, breathe out. This breath in, and this breath out. And become awake. Become alive with all that you feel. This next breath in, come in and take a deep breath. Bring it right down to your belly. Hold it for a moment. Take another breath. Bring it up into your chest. Again, and slowly let it out. One more time. Take a deep breath into your belly. Let your belly grow. Another breath. Bring it up into your chest. Hold it, another breath. And then slowly let it go. And just sit and be. Just be with the one that gives you your breath. Know where to go. Nothing to think about. Nothing to achieve. Just be who you are. Walalian. In Sonogamo. It almost feels like everybody, I know it feels like you get relaxed and you fall asleep, but actually it's being relaxed and waking up. And,
Yeah.
it will come in time. And I hope to see you all again. And even if you only get to practice once during the day, good stuff. Have a great meeting. I'm going to have to leave because I have a class I have to attend at 10:05. So.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was wonderful. It's always a pleasure to have you at our conferences. We always enjoy your presentations. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to sign out. See everybody.
A big warm shout out to TC, Trudy, and Karen. Just to let you know, we can see you on YouTube. We're going to do a draw.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're at the home stretch now. We've got another gift to give away and followed by a presentation. So, going to draw a name here. Make this real legitimate like. All right. Tobique. We have anybody from Tobique First Nation Health Center today?
Oh, hello.
Hello. We can hear you.
Why don't you fix it? We're here.
Okay, great.
What did we
So
win?
the way we've been doing this is whoever has the closest birthday coming up. So talk amongst
I just had a
yourself.
birthday. He's coming up.
Oh yeah.
Until February. So.
In June.
Till
So
June, yeah. December. Oh, December.
All right. So who was that?
Kristen.
Okay, great. You got that, Pam?
Yeah, I'll get in touch.
Hey, what do we get?
Okay, awesome. You get a $50 gift card.
Kristen? Wow.
Yeah, and we'll be
Just
sending
one?
those out after the. Yeah, and a little thank you card or so. Yeah, we'll make it
Whatever.
nice.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How cool. Aren't you glad you came?
All right. Well, stay tuned. There will be other chances to win here before we close. So, oh well. Anyway, so we're going to get started for the last session of the conference, and it looks like it's sunny in Manitoba, Dan. It's not so sunny here, but so welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Dan and his team from St. Elizabeth Health, who are going to lead us in a conversation. I can see you. Hopefully you're tuned in there. And Dan, if you don't mind taking it away and introducing your team, we'll get started.
You bet. Thanks, Corey. Can you guys hear me?
All right.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Loud and clear? Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. No, we can hear you, Dan.
Perfect. Okay. Just want to
Yeah.
make sure.
Thanks.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. It's a little later for you guys. It's a little earlier for us. Out here, we're in Manitoba. So thank you for inviting us to your conference. I was in there virtually yesterday. I was really impressed with what was being discussed and where things were going. So I'd like to introduce my team today. Myself, I'm Dan Weed. I'm actually the education lead for SE, First Nations Inuit Metis program. I'm a nurse by trade. I've been a nurse for 33 plus years. I don't like counting after 30, but it's been a while. I'm from Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. It's a First Nation community north of Winnipeg. Winnipeg's the capital of Manitoba. It's a driving community. We're about 45 minutes away from Winnipeg. So, but with my nursing career, I've spent a significant amount of it working in Indigenous communities. I actually was a outpost nurse working in the nursing stations for about 5 years on and off. I've worked in health centers and done a lot of work in acute care. So kind of been doing a number of different things, managing different hospitals. In fact, one of the last first Health Canada hospitals in Canada, I was managing that hospital for a little bit, and health director in my home community for like 12 years. So kind of been around a little bit. I want to introduce you to one of my colleagues, Irene Shaw. Irene, give a wave. There you go. So Irene has been been with us for a little while. Irene is an RPN, or a registered psychiatric nurse. She's been doing the role for a number of years, well over 30. So been kind of around, and actually it was Irene and I had worked together when I was a health director in Broken Head. We did we shared clients, and we really we had a really good working team there. So Irene had gone on to Red Cross and done some work. We unfortunately in Manitoba we had a significant amount of flooding, and a number of First Nations were unfortunately flooded out from their communities. So Irene spent a lot of time working with the community members. And after that, she came over to us. So thank you for coming with us and sharing, Irene. Off to my left is Frederica Ballantyne. Frederica also worked with me in Broken Head. We had, like I said, I had an amazing team. And Frederica was a home care nurse, but she moved into other things and became a nurse practitioner. And in her role now, is actually a mental health therapist in First Nation communities. Fred's background also is registered psychiatric nursing, went back to school to get her Bachelor of Nursing, and then got a Master's of Nursing ×2, I believe. So, yeah, been a little busy. So that's our team today. And we want to talk a little bit about how things roll with pandemics. And actually, Irene kind of put together a very interesting title that I kind of like, because in Manitoba we actually ran into this in the springtime. When we talk about, our official title is Pandemics and Behavior, but I kind of like our subtitle, which is How Many Rolls of Toilet Paper Did You Hoard? And, you know, it's kind of, we make it amusing, but in all reality in Manitoba that did happen. So, and I was on the receiving end of that because, you know, we assumed that toilet paper would be in plentiful supplies, and things were getting a little tight by the end of spring, and I was kind of thinking, well, they don't have Sears, you know, catalogs anymore, so we could be in trouble here very soon. But it did work out; everything was okay. So, but we do have a little agenda that we want to talk about today, and you know, I want to talk about my experience as a health director and a nurse during a pandemic, and I mean, we're in it with this one, but I went through the whole pandemic and how it worked and didn't work. Irene we're going to have Irene talking a little bit about the behavior. And then Fred's going to be talking a little bit about what she's seeing right now as a mental health therapist. And also, I didn't really talk about it, but Frederica is one of her, some of her work as a nurse practitioner, she's working in addictions and what she's seeing. And then we can look at some resourcing, and then we can talk about coping, because that's really important. And that's something that I really ran into when I discuss what I went through with H1N1 in Manitoba, which was like 10 years ago. So, you know, first of all, we're all living this experience right now, this pandemic experience. So we're all going to have stories and experiences from it, good and bad. I went through the full pandemic experience from when it started to when it ended, and how we dealt with that. So I'd just like to share a little bit about that, because we're, you know, there's talking about waves, and you're in Atlantic bubbles, and there's been some real successes with that, and there's also been some struggles, and I really applaud you guys for what you've been doing. Very, very important. So I just want to start sharing a little bit about this. So my father, he grew up in a mixed farm in Manitoba, rural Manitoba. That's cattle, horses, cropland. And as a young child, he went through the Spanish flu. And he, you know, it's very interesting. He was old enough to remember a lot of he picked up a lot of the experiences. So he wasn't a baby, he was a younger person, I think probably around the age of 5 or 6, maybe 8, somewhere in around there. And this was the Spanish flu of 1918, 1919, and some places actually carried on until about 1920 or a little bit later in Canada. So him and his generation, they experienced this pandemic. And it's interesting, he never talked about it, ever. So growing up, I never thought about pandemics. I mean, hey, we're living in Canada, right? What are we seeing? We're not seeing huge issues, and I think that says a lot about our healthcare, a lot about Canada. But, you know, so I never really gave much thought to that. And, when my father retired, he became older, and I was working as a nurse. I was spending more time with my father. And we started, one time we started talking about that. And he's not a very chatty guy, never was, and that's just his nature. But what he talked about was there was a lot of work as a community. The community came together. Maybe not physically, but there was the need to work as a group effectively. He talked a lot about how, people were helping each other out a lot. Families would get sick, they couldn't take care of their livestock, couldn't chop wood, those kind of things, so people were helping out. And, he didn't say a lot about it, but you could tell that there was fear. There was a lot of fear. I mean, healthcare was as good as it could be at the time, but in rural Manitoba, probably not top notch, and, there was a cost to that. So it was interesting to hear that perspective from him. So when I think about my first pandemic, which was H1N1, it lasted about 19 months as a pandemic. It was, I think it kind of showed up in Canada about 2009, lasted till about 2010, it started, I think, the spring of 2009, ended about the fall of 2010, so not super long. But it did affect, in fact, I believe between 700 million and 1.4 billion people worldwide. So it was about 10 to 20% of the population at the time. And in Manitoba, it was very hard on First Nation communities. It really hammered us pretty hard. And so it was kind of interesting. So in my world, I was, working away as a health director and a nurse. So I was kind of doing both. I love my career in nursing, so I really kind of got to do both, and I really appreciated my community supporting me to do that. So it kept my skill sets up. So in kind of April, I started seeing these clients in clinic, and they were really sick with respiratory illness, just like coughing all over me and just incredibly sick. So, initially I kind of thought this was like some late appearance of a seasonal influenza. And then there was talk about this thing called swine flu, and then more information started coming out about it. But I didn't really give a lot of thought about a pandemic coming, because you kind of get tunnel vision, right? You're working in your own little world and, doing whatever you're doing. And then we started testing clients, and sure enough, we started seeing H1N1. So now it was confirmed in the community. And we didn't know a huge amount about it right at that moment, but we did know that it created a heck of a lot of fear in people, the community, the staff, health providers. It was interesting that a lot of physicians, did not want to see people with any kind of respiratory illness. Everybody was told to go to the ER if there was a problem, and which did a great job as far as log jamming local emergency rooms. So, so what did we do about that? Well, initially we were not prepared. We had great plans, great community disaster plans for fire, flooding, those kind of things. We didn't have a pandemic plan. And, we had minimal PPE. And there was minimal staff training on PPE, no real training on pandemic management. So it was a lot of struggles. And what really kind of threw me was how fast the pandemic hit and how quickly it started spreading. We didn't have access to antivirals, which actually with H1N1, antivirals, if you caught it early enough, would work well. But there was some resistance to providing it quickly initially, so there was some real struggles. So there were some real tough decisions that had to be made real quick. And one was the fact that we were seeing clients with H1N1, or suspected at the time. And we didn't have enough PPE. Well, it sounds really familiar, right? It sounds like the spring in some ways. So, it was really hard decisions to be made. What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you, one of the decisions that was made by me was we're going to protect the staff. So some people like myself went without. Was that a great decision? I don't know. But that's the decision that I made. It was a very hard decision. In fact, I have to admit, in probably my 33 or plus years of nursing, that was the toughest decision I ever made, because now I'm thinking about my health, my family, what am I bringing home to my family, those kind of things. A lot of stress. But, my staff, I need to take care of them, because we're taking care of our community, right? Our community. So it was some very tough decisions to make. very hard ones to make, some personal ones like that, and I needed to provide care to my community too. So it was difficult. But what we did do was you got innovative. And when you're facing these struggles, and I think that says a lot about Indigenous people, we can be pretty innovative and we can do a lot of really interesting things, and we can do things pretty fast. And I think when we think of these community shutdowns that happened in the springtime, that says something. You don't really wait for a whole lot of official responses sometimes. You just do things because they make sense, right? So we also did some other things. We really got people trained up fast in infection control practices. You know, I found PPE. The PPE supply chain, the official chain was log jammed. We were not getting stuff. So I found alternate sources that gave very high quality PPE, and we got it. And people, you know, now we had enough PPE in the community. People were now more protected. People knew how to use it. So again, we're being innovative and we're being responsive very quickly. And we built a real pandemic plan. And I must admit, when I say real, it needs to be real. And because, you know, I think we've seen things where plans look great on paper, will they really work? And these kind of situations, what I found is you need a plan that really works because it's a real deal. So something to keep in mind. I think all your communities have pandemic plans. My suggestion is you make sure that they're actually workable, because every community has different strengths, different resources. And so we built something that was quite unique, but it worked. We also did other things, like we worked really well at developing partnerships, and we found appropriate resourcing. We developed a vaccine strategy, and you know, we were able to find a way to keep services and care going in our community. And so we were doing short-term problem solving, we were doing longer-term problem solving, and really long-term problem solving. And we were making sure that we had a strategy to deal with all those kind of issues. In the end, I must admit, it was a lot of struggle, but nobody died. We had some pretty sick people. And when I say that, I'm actually quite proud of my team and my community, because in other communities in Manitoba and First Nation communities, people did die, and there were fairly high death rates. So, and that's unfortunate. You know, and there were some interesting things that were happening. You know, social media was starting to take off. So, you know, that's different from now. You're seeing a lot more social media. So there's some things to throw in that we need to think about going forward. I know you're in an Atlantic bubble. For the most part, it's been pretty successful. We're having our struggles here in Manitoba. I won't, you know, lie to you about it, you know, that everything's peachy here. We've certainly had our struggles. We're starting to see more COVID in First Nation communities, so it's starting to creep in, even with the shutdowns. And so, like, I really pushed, if you haven't noticed, I pushed hard about making sure your pandemic plan is workable. And because we didn't have that plan, so we had to work real fast to get one. And actually that plan was so effective because we did have, in the start of wave 2, we did have H1N1 came back into our community, and we activated that pandemic plan. We started making it work, and it was very successful. In fact, so successful, a lot of communities in Western Canada actually adopted our plan as a template. And with COVID showing up this year, my community activated that plan again. They updated it, and it's working quite well. So, you know, great story, it worked great, and, you know, sounds great and everything, but there was a cost to it. And it was, when I think about myself, for me, it was a feeling right from the start to the finish of this whole pandemic. There's a real heaviness. It really, it was hard to describe, but I think in the end, you know, what it really was a fear. And, you know, as a leader, you know, how often do you admit that you have fear, right? But, you know, it was fear in my professional world and my personal world, because I was worried about my family. And it took a lot of stress. It really cranked up the stress level, that fear, and it really took a toll. You know, and I think it was professionally, it was a really steep learning curve for myself and my team. There's a lot of pressure from the community to, you know, that's what health is there to do, right? Is to provide health care. So lots and lots of pressure on me and my team. And, you know, things were happening very quickly. Situations changing. Am I making the right decisions? You know, planning for the worst, right, with that pandemic plan. And, you know, it just felt like my adrenaline was going all the time. And, you know, it was really hard to shut down. And I never really took a break because I was trying to stay one step ahead of H1N1. So when I think about those things, you know, and I like to talk about, you know, balance in our lives, and I do some education with students across Canada. And I like to talk about balance. You know, you balance work and school and your life. I didn't have balance during that time. And people can say, well, you know, it was a pandemic and you had to make it work. But thing is, these things do take a toll on people. And so I like to think that, you know, I was pushing myself really hard. I wasn't resting. I was always thinking about H1N1. It was always on my mind, even when I was with family. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't eating right. I didn't even walk the dog anymore because, you know, my whole life was consumed. And I think the dog missed that. I know I did. You know, so it was really, I was giving up a lot of things. So after the pandemic was done, you know, job well done, it was great. Then it didn't end because there was this avalanche of work that I didn't get to that needed to be done now. So, you know, instead of taking a big breath and you're done and, you know, you can go fishing or something, now it's this enormous amount of work that came your way. So the pressure for work never stopped. And, you know, it really took a lot out of me, and I have to admit, it probably took me about 2 years to recover because I was so exhausted. So I really would want to say to people that, you know, with this bubble thing, things are going well. Things can change really quickly, though, and you need to be able to make sure that you can take care of yourselves. Because if you can't take care of yourself, like I was getting to the point, probably this pandemic would have lasted another 6 months or maybe a year, I probably wouldn't have been a very effective leader anymore. And so I was missing that part about take care of myself. So that's what we need to talk a little bit about, because you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of other people? So on that note, I think we'll move on to Irene and see what Irene has to say about things.
Well, thanks, Dan. Actually, a lot of what Dan has been talking about, you'll see that I've touched on those points in what I'm going to talk about. And just so people know, there are hard copies available that we can make available of what we're presenting. So just sit back and enjoy and relax. When you have something like an unknown virus like COVID-19, it causes a lot of changes and some bizarre reactions. That's why I put, how many rolls of toilet paper did you hoard? Because people were doing bizarre things and you think, why would you be hoarding toilet paper? It's not like it's a major GI, you know, virus or whatever. But pandemics are scary, no matter how you look at them, and it increases our anxiety and stress levels because we worry. We worry about protecting our loved ones, and we worry about how we're going to deal with this virus, how it's going to impact us. It definitely disrupted a lot of normal routines and creates a basis for fear. So we're creatures of habit. We don't like change. You know, people like to do the same thing and have routines, and we say how that's so healthy for children. Well, the pandemic has just totally upset the apple cart. It's created a lot of changes, and not only changes, but inconsistencies. So you've got service changes. You know, even myself, I'd go, need to pick something up at the store, and I'm thinking, well, are they open their regular hours, or do they have different hours? And, you know, so you've got that, you've got closures. There was changes in how we provided service. Some people, you know, continue to do it in person. Some of us had to go virtual. What services were even available? For people, there's employment changes. How many people lost their jobs? How many people had reduced hours? How many people had to suddenly struggle with working from home while you've got 3-year-olds crawling all over your lap? So it created no end to the changes we had to adapt to. Rules changed. For some people, it was okay to go into homes. For other people, it wasn't okay to go into homes. Not all the changes or the rules even made sense. Dan touched on the media, so now you add that layer of information. Anybody who receives articles from Medscape will know that 80% of them on a daily basis seem to be focusing on COVID-19. talking about new treatments, talking about consequences, just there's no end to that information. Articles talk about healthcare workers dying, the number of them dying. We're receiving a lot of mixed messages about the treatments and about the behaviors. Masks are necessary? No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Keeps bouncing back and forth. Hydroxychloroquine is not a good treatment. Yes, it is a treatment. And then south of the border, we're getting all kinds of mixed messages and information there as well. And we're as impacted by the media from the USA as we are of Canada. And the latest controversy is how the virus is actually spread. Is it spread by droplets or is it spread by aerosol? There's a huge difference in what you need to do to protect yourself depending on that. And we're seeing protests and rights activists denouncing wearing masks, and you look at that behavior and you think, well, this is bizarre. Have people lost all sense of propriety? Well, all of that comes from fear and anxiety because these times are very, very unsettling. So fear causes us to be suspicious. You hear things like the government is doing this to control us. The most recent thing I saw on Facebook was an apparent physician, because again, when you see these videos, you have no way of really knowing who these people are. A physician in Britain that was saying that COVID-19 didn't exist, that it was all the governments, using the police as their puppets, and it was a hoax perpetrated to control people. And my comment to that was, wow, if they could get the entire world's leaders to agree on one thing, that's very remarkable, because we can't even agree on something in Canada, just one country. So again, you have to be critical when you're hearing things in the media, but fear leads us to believe these things. Healthcare providers went from heroes to, you hear stories of where suddenly they're villains, because people are fearful when they see you out on the street in your greens or your nursing uniform that you're going to be spreading the virus. So people started to avoid accessing health care. The Manitoba doctors put ads on TV during the initial months of COVID telling people to come in and have their health needs addressed, because people were scared to go into doctors' offices. They would be at home suffering the symptoms of heart attack, but not going into the emergency rooms for fear of COVID-19. And when you think about it, Manitoba has, up until now, we had very low rates in comparison to some other areas, and still the behaviors were so fear-based that you would have thought that we had thousands of active cases when we really didn't. People started to put their energies into, fighting for their personal liberties rather than thinking about what they needed to do from a health perspective. So all of this has a lot to do with anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about what anxiety is. And we feel anxious when we feel our safety is threatened in some way. I can only imagine how Moncton, New Brunswick is feeling now, and if any of the participants are from that area, because Atlantic Canada has been very successful in using their bubble concept. And you've had very, very low rates to no rates of COVID, and to suddenly have 19 new cases, that has to be very anxiety provoking, and that's the nature of the beast. Manitoba did well too, and now we're not, so we never know when things are going to change. If you look at, what's the function of fear and anxiety? It's to signal that there's a danger and that we need to do something, to protect ourselves. That would be an adaptive response. Coping strategies will vary depending on the situation and depending on our own personal styles. Usually we do active coping is when the situation is such that we can escape it if there's a threat. So that's sort of the flight response. Passive coping, like freezing, is when we can't escape the threat. So with COVID-19, you can see how it's confusing, because can we avoid it? Yes, we can to a certain degree. Can we run from it? Not really, because we still need groceries and we still need to access health care. Or are we just denying it, putting our heads in the sand and saying, nope, it doesn't exist, I don't need to wear a mask, I'm invincible? Some of the media has been, reports have been reinforcing that. And then especially if you're a Facebook fan, there's always something on there like that. One of the things that we do know from a research perspective that explains some of these bizarre behaviors that we're seeing is that when we think about a threat, we seem to be less sensitive to the objective data, to the logical, to the real information, and much more affected by the emotional part of it. And that then our behaviors seem to be guided more by our emotions, such as anxiety and fear, rather than rational thought. Because why on earth would anybody want to be hoarding toilet paper? It made no sense, but people did it anyways, right? Our shelves were all empty for months, it seemed, yeah. So if you use the mask as an example as well, there's such a controversy over that. Are we blind to public health importance? I mean, even if you had the common cold, what would be the, or the flu? What would be the detriment to wearing a mask and not spreading it to other people by coughing and sneezing and things like that? And yet if you look at the degree of the response to wearing masks, those that are opposing it, you almost have to think, is that their attempt to control an uncontrollable situation? Are they focusing on the one piece that they feel they have some say about? And if that's the case, then it helps us understand these behaviors and be less angry and annoyed, and maybe be more supportive and comforting to those people rather than critical of what they're doing. So when you're talking about dealing with fear, the first thing is you have to acknowledge that you have it. We're not invincible. Some of us like to feel that we have to portray, that persona. But if you don't acknowledge it, you can't do anything about it. You need to look at how you're expressing your fear. Like, what is that you're doing and saying? Does it make sense? Do you need to be aware that, you're more irritable and short-tempered? We need to recognize the situations that trigger this fear. Is it with us all the time, or is it in certain environments? And then that allows you to explore ways and techniques to use to reduce your fear. Do you have to do some self-talk? Do you have to give yourself a moment to say, okay, like realistically here, what is going on? What's the chance, the probability that I'm going to get ill or spread it or whatever, and how am I managing this stress? Like Dan said, it impacted him incredibly, the stress, and that he probably would have had some longer-term health consequences had it gone on for a few more months. So we really need to be aware of how we display our fear and how we manage it. So on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Frederica, because she's going to fill us in a little bit on what she's been seeing from a community and mental health perspective as to behaviors that are occurring.
Yeah, thanks, Irene. So I can share just a little bit about what this has looked like in the community where I've been working. One of the things I noticed before we had our first case, which has happened recently, there was a lot of changes happening in terms of how we provide services. Some services were shut right down and remained shut down. Any group gatherings were no longer happening. Then the community put very quickly the check stops up to restrict access to the community, and individuals' responses to this situation has also been very interesting. So what I saw that when we reduced services to prevent the spread, we were no longer having as much one-on-one, or really for a time we're not able to do any one-on-one counseling. Rules are changing every day, so it's confusing too, but we saw people who would benefit from one-on-one therapy and group therapy and supports for things like addiction, for example. They really were suddenly left isolated and really struggled. We saw with the community shutdowns, with the barricades at the entrances to the community, this is actually an unusual thing, is that the shift of there's addiction in most communities. Our community is not spared, but the shift in terms of what substances were being used, even we saw quite a significant shift in that. One of the positive things about the check stops was certain drugs were not able to get through the check stops and come into the community anymore. So we saw that there was a reduction in certain types of illicit drug use, but then an uptick, a rise in other drug use that was more accessible. So it was interesting to see that we did see overall people who had been struggling with addiction and who were doing rather well with the supports, going to programming and groups. Now that was shut down, people were left isolated, and we saw a lot of people relapsing as a result, just having suddenly been cut off from those supports. But another thing we noticed is in terms of accessing healthcare, we had some tragic deaths, a number of tragic deaths in the community through the summer as a direct result of people being afraid to access healthcare, being afraid to go to hospital. We had a number of people die at home that probably very likely would have been saved had they accessed healthcare, and they just were not feeling safe to go, and that's really sad. So once we got our first case, then another whole dynamic began to show that was probably brewing there all along. But when the first case came to the community, there was the people that were affected in the contacts were terrified of being ostracized by the rest of the community. That was their biggest fear, and that was really sad to see. And there was actually some evidence that people were targeting them. And again, out of fear, just fear of the unknown, fear of getting sick, wanting to protect themselves, wanting to control something. We don't want this in our community. So the leadership did a good job trying to calm that down, calm people, and really speak to their sense of community and supporting each other. So it's a situation that's settled down, but that was a really, really really stark, I think, reminder to me when I saw that about what fear can do, and when we have no control and we have these unknown and frightening things happening. Other things in terms of moving to online supports for mental health and addiction, and even home care, having a lot of the services reduced to minimal services, providing just phone check-ins rather than the healthcare aides going in as regularly. That it created some hardship for the clients and the families. In terms of mental health, I noticed that people were not feeling as supported by just phone support. They really missed that one-on-one, face-to-face interaction. And there were some technical issues too. Many people in the community don't have a consistently working cell phone, or they only have texting apps. Internet service is patchy. Our regulatory bodies were saying, well, you should do like what we're doing here now, where you can still see each other. Use Zoom or some kind of platform to continue to provide this counseling support, and you could even run groups that way. But all of that hinges on people having actually access to working internet and reliable connection and the devices and all of that. So all of those things are not really reliable in place, and particularly not for the most vulnerable who have, limited access to financial resources and all kinds of resources overall. Another issue I noticed within the healthcare team is that there was some anxiety, also some frustration, some mistrust, and some bitterness sometimes developed among the team members because the rules were always changing, and rules were different for different service providers. All groups are shut down, so all the group programming staff were either working from home or being laid off, so that's a big loss to them. Home care continues to have to operate at least, and public health, at least the essential services. So there was I saw that some conflict develop among, or if it develop or get worse within our healthcare team. Well, why do they get to stay home, or why do they get to keep their job, and why do I have to be here all day? And those kind of things added to people's anxiety and frustration. So that's kind of what I saw and what I continue to see, and we have to adapt every day as these things come up. And Irene will talk about now how to cope with anxiety, right?
Yeah.
That's just a little bit of what I've seen.
So certainly you can see the connecting threads through the story of the H1N1 pandemic, what Frederica is seeing now with COVID-19. I think that there's just some common behaviors and common issues, that we face. So one of the ways to cope is know the facts. Drinking bleach, no, is not an option. And there's just been such ridiculous things, drink hot water, it'll flush it out of your system, whatever. So know the facts, stop spreading rumors. If you see something like that, don't forward it on Facebook because then it's just going to reach that many more people. Use reputable sites. There was a doctor that was delivering information on how infections are spread. He was a chiropractor that quit chiropractics and went into natural health food store chains. So, I mean, really, you need to understand what the risk is to yourself and to those that you're having contact with. So if you arm yourself with good information from reliable sources, you'll at least have a basis. Stress during an infectious disease pandemic like we're experiencing can cause all kinds of things. We're fearful, we worry about our health, the health of our families. It changes our sleeping and eating patterns. It's hard to sleep, it's hard to concentrate. Sometimes chronic health conditions can get worse. If you have existing mental health conditions, they can get worse as well. There's a change in tobacco and substance use. Those are all things that you need to be aware of and arm yourself with a plan of how you're going to address it. How you respond to, pandemics or stress, of course, is going to vary by your background. Some of your own personal history. What kind of social supports do you have? What is your financial situation? What's your health and emotional background, and what kind of a community do you live in? We would love to think that all communities are close-knit and supportive, but sometimes that's not the case, and you need to be able to deal with that. There's a lot of groups that are strongly affected, by things like a pandemic. Those that are at high risk for severe illness, if you talk about older adults, people that have underlying medical conditions, children, teens, people that are caring for family members, frontline workers, essential workers. My son-in-law is a milkman, and he was considered an essential service, so he had to continue making his deliveries, and has 4 children living in the home, and how do you manage that? People that have existing mental health conditions or substance use issues. Those people that have lost their jobs, people with disabilities, some people that are isolated, those that don't have access to information, like Frederica was saying. Not everybody has, internet that's up and running all the time. 1 hour out of Winnipeg, and you don't have cell service. So, we're a developed country, but we're not that developed. So you might not have access to good information, or you might be homeless, or you live in a congregate setting. One of our largest groups that were at risk were our Hutterite communities, and they certainly struggle with that. But I think what this list tells us is almost everybody is at risk, because I don't see who's not included in one way or another in that list. So we're all vulnerable to stress. And so because of that, we need to be able to recognize stress in ourselves and to take some steps to build some resilience and some coping. So as a healthcare provider, or just a general person that's stressed, what are some of the things you see? Well, usually you're probably a little short-tempered, might be a bit more irritable than usual. And if somebody were to try and point that out to you, you'd say, no, I'm not. I'm fine. What's your problem? Certainly, you can feel uncertain, nervous, or anxious. Definitely feel helpless and powerless, because you don't know where this virus is lurking. Who have you been next to that maybe, has it? Do you ever watch people's reactions if you happen to sneeze or cough in public? It's like, just panic, right? You might have a loss in motivation. It's like, what's the use? You're just so worn out from being stressed and tired that, that you don't have the energy that you have. You might be starting to feel sad or depressed, have some trouble sleeping, trouble concentrating. So you need to know when these things start to happen to you. The Center for Disease Control has a great site that had the following tips on how to cope and enhance your resilience. Frederica talked about issues within the workplace, and that's one of their first bullets. Communicate with your coworkers, supervisors, and employees about job stress. Talk about how pandemics are affecting people. If you are a boss, or the head of a program, then get your staff together and acknowledge it. Validate their feelings and stuff. Identify the factors that cause stress and work together to try and see if there's any solutions for it. Know how to access mental health services in your workplace, if that's a possibility. And if not, then within your community, who do you go to for support? Everyone is in an unusual situation and working with limited resources, so all of us need to practice a little bit of patience and tolerance, as well. Everybody's performing a crucial role, and it's important that we stay as healthy as we can. When you're away from work, get some exercise, spend some time outdoors, do things that you really enjoy, that take a break, and try and recharge yourself. It's really important to look at coping and health in a very holistic way. And if you look at Indigenous concepts of health, they are holistic. And it's important to have a balance between physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects of your health. You can't, I worked in mental health for so many years, and I said, you can't chop the head off from the rest of the body. So when I would talk to people, I would talk to them about everything that was happening to them, not just the thoughts they were having or the mood that they had, because sometimes you'd find out it was a thyroid that wasn't functioning properly, that was the major perpetrator of the problems, not their social situation or personal situation. So I think that we always need to think holistically. That's the only way that you will really, truly be healthy. So if you look at something from a physical health perspective and something that would be holistic in thought, the thought of hunting kind of came to mind. Anybody who enjoys that. You're outside in nature, you're walking around, you're getting the physical activity, you're getting the fresh air, you're doing something that is useful or productive if you share, with family members, you're providing for your family, for food. So we need to look at more of those kinds of activities that we can be doing. If we look at spiritual health, what activities give you meaning? If you've had a job loss or a change, what can you do that's going to give you a new purpose? And all we have to do is look at the different companies within Canada that repurposed their manufacturing sites to respond to the pandemic. You've got breweries in Winnipeg that are making hand sanitizer when it was in short supply. That's being creative. Personally, I used to sew just because. Well, now I started sewing masks just because, right? And it's a useful thing. And I make different kinds, and whoever it fits, when they come, they get to take it home, So we need to think in that way. What gives us meaning? And just because you've lost your former way of having meaning in your life doesn't mean that there's not a new one out there. From a mental health perspective, how do we meet our social needs? One of the saddest things that I saw happening were people that were not allowed to visit with dying family members. And I'm always a person who encourages people to think outside the box. And when I saw that it really upset me and angered me, because I thought, surely to goodness, the hospitals could have come up with a strategy. For instance, if my mom was dying, I could come in with a complete second layer of clothing, which would be my PPE, and I could purchase masks, gloves, all of that, go into an isolation room, stay with my mom, and then as I left, peel it all off, put it in a garbage bag, and walk out. Now, how would that be different than the nurses walking in and putting on gowns and gloves and masks, taking it all off before they left the room? But that means that you need to have administrators who are willing to think outside the box, and you need to have staff that are willing to think outside the box. My friend had a 94-year-old mother that was in a supportive housing situation, who was in her room with her food being delivered to the door, left outside her door. She didn't even get to see the person delivering it. And the family had to stay away, and for some reason, even though she was only on the 4th floor with a balcony, they thought that they couldn't go on the grounds, even from the road, and talk to her from outside. I think that we need to dispel those kinds of myths and be creative. And if there is an opportunity to use an iPad or something, a device, to help families connect, then to encourage that and to allow our staff to have a few minutes to show the elderly how to do that. So I think that as a nation, we really need to think outside the box when we're dealing with situations like that. Emotional health. What do you have a passion for? Being curious is so important. They tell us we need to encourage our children to be curious about different things, to ask questions. Well, as adults, we need to be curious too. Curious about what's going on, knowing what our limits are, what are some new things that we would like to learn, what recharges you. And that's basically how we cope in times of stress, reaching out to each other and looking at each of us individually as well, like what do we need to feel a sense of purpose, to have a sense of enjoyment and curiosity, and to accept that life is different and embrace some new changes that we see as being a positive thing. One thing that I saw happening is it was forcing families to be together more. Because in our world, a lot of times you see children that are scheduled every minute of the day. If it's not this activity at school, it's this, it's that. And you could see how those parents and families went into crisis when suddenly they had their children and they had to figure out a way to engage them. And so I think from a family perspective, for some families, this has been very good. For others, it's also created extra stress. So I think that we really do need to care for ourselves during such unsettling and changing times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. So, and Irene's really highlighted the ways that you can care for yourself and others, and some of the positive coping strategies, and also some of the maybe bright lights and unexpected positive things that could come out of this that we've seen. If things get really tough and you feel that you just need some extra support and the regular supports just aren't available for many of us, for nurses there is a 24-hour service available through the Occupational Critical Incident Stress Management Service, which is a federal service, right, Dan? And will we provide a link? Or
Yeah, there'll be something.
We'll provide you with the information that you can call them 24 hours a day. They are available for you guys in the community if you have a real tough situation and you just need some support right then and there as a team or even individually to debrief and to plan and figure out what to do next, access some additional resources. For all First Nation individuals, there is also the Hope for Wellness helpline available now, and that's a fairly recent thing that the federal government has also provided. And again, it's an 800 number. It's available 7 days a week, 24 hours, and it's available also so that you can call them. Anybody can call when they need to talk, they're distressed, they're having a strong emotional reaction, are triggered by bad memories, sort of any mental health situation that arises. And the nice thing about that is that there's also the option of using chat. Other things I'm aware of is that for youth, there's a kids help text line, which I've directed lots of youth to. Again, because the regular supports are limited and they're not as available. The youth help text line, because youth tend to not want to talk on the phone and they like texting. And that's also available 24 hours a day, staffed by professional mental health therapists. And I've seen some kids use it, and it is very effective. And it's very simple. It's 686868. So those are some of the resources in a crisis right now if you're overwhelmed.
I've had a number of my students use the wellness line, and I wasn't asking for feedback on that because that's between them and the wellness line, but I have gotten feedback and it's been pretty positive. So it's just something to keep in mind. And for the occupational critical stress incident management, I've been involved in that, and it's been positive. It's been positive experiences. So, in my opinion, I've had good feedback on both those supports. So, something to keep in mind. At this point, I guess we're open to some questions. Anybody has any? Any questions in the chat box, Corey or GR? Or,
No questions, Dan. I'll definitely share the resources once what we'll do is post-conference with our little evaluation is we'll pull together all the various topics and resources that were shared throughout the 2 days and and highlight some of the questions and try to respond to that. So please stay tuned for follow-up to this post-conference. But Dan and team, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for that information. I know it's a little earlier there, so we appreciate you getting up and joining us. And just to let the participants know and those that are listening, we were actually partnering with SE Health this year to revise and revamp our home and community care policies and procedures, as well as updated assessment tools, which was indicated in the survey that folks had responded to some time ago. Definitely a need, and we look forward to that project, hoping to have something delivered to communities in early spring. So please stay tuned. So very appreciative and SE Health, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so we're going to do one more draw, last and final draw here for a $50 gift card, which we'll send out next week. And this is Glooscap. Anybody joining from Glooscap, either in a health center or online? No. Okay. No. Okay. We'll draw one more name there, Pam. Great. Official light. Wakaba. Anyone joining from Wakaba? Oh dear. Okay. Anybody online?
No, but we have a Let's Go Escasoni.
Okay. Well. Okay. King's clear. Anyone from me?
They were on yesterday.
Okay. Nope. Keep going. Oops.
Oh, sorry.
Sam. Okay. I don't think there's a Acadia. Anybody from Acadia today?
Yeah, King's clear.
Oh, King's clear. Okay. Sorry, Kate. Yep, we heard you, and we will get a gift card out to you. So the winner goes to Kate. So I'm going to, first of all, say thank you very much for joining us these last couple of days, or however much of the presentations you were able to join. We appreciate your patience. This was our first go at a virtual type conference, and it wasn't without its hiccups. However, it wasn't without its high points too. So we know that most of you are probably looking forward to some face-to-face opportunities in the near future, and we will deliver upon that. So once it is safe to do so. But as I said, I do appreciate your patience over the last couple of days and your engagement. And although it probably won't be the focus, I think virtual trainings and communication will be a component of how we communicate with one another going forward. So going to pass it over to Bev, Bev Medill, to say some closing words and close with a prayer. Bev, are you online?
I am here in Wagmatcook.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bev.
Thank you, folks. So first of all, thank you to Lisa for opening our conference, with a thanks and gratitude prayer. And now we close our time together with appreciation of the ability to meet over technology. So if you would join me in a closing prayer. Creator, we give thanks today for the opportunity we've had to share, learn, and support each other to deliver our care to all communities. Well, all to those who gave us their expertise in front and behind the camera. We ask for continued health for our elders and community. We ask for health and wisdom to continue our care for our clients and families. Tahoe. Thank you, everyone.